Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. Being a CEO can be quite rewarding. Do not let the word CEO fool you. I am not a rich CEO who runs a corporate company. I run a small family business that has two separate locations. My parents run the original location that they started 20 plus years ago, and my brother and I manage the second location that we were able to open about 5 years ago. We are a small bookstore that offers an exchange program. We ended up getting a lot of our inventory for free because when customers donate books to us, we allow them to receive credit towards their entire purchase. It's like a store credit program. Anyway, that is not really the point of the story, but I have been an avid reader ever since childhood, so I am passionate about what I do. When I was about 10 years old, my family and I were in a car crash that left me paralyzed from the waist down. Because of this, I am in a wheelchair. I can do everything I need to do in the store. I can stock the shelves I can reach, talk to customers, check them out, and organize all the books. Sure, I must do things in a different way than my brother or our few employees, but I am still efficient and productive. Definitely not lazy. Well, that's not what Karen had to say a few weeks ago. I could tell from the get-go that Karen would be a problem. She walked in so snobby. But sometimes I can be wrong. So obviously I was going to help her regardless. However, that did not go so well. Me. Hey there, welcome to our bookstore. Is this your first time here? Karen. Actually, it is. And it will be the last since the employees here like to fake disabilities. Me. I am sorry? Karen. You dumbass. Who do you think you are pretending to be disabled so that you can sit in your chair all day long? Me. Ma'am, no one here is pretending to be anything. I am paralyzed from the... Karen. Oh, shut up. You are too young to be sitting your ass in a chair. At this point, I was completely baffled. I've had a lot of different reactions to me being in a wheelchair, but never anything like this, and certainly never something so aggressive. If anything, most people are simply curious. They like to be nosy and ask questions, which after a certain amount of time I got used to it. I was left completely speechless. But what happened next left me even more speechless. Karen then proceeds to walk up to me, grabs the handles on my chair, and pushes my chair forward so that I fall out of it. It all happened so fast. I did not even have time to try and stop it or even process what was going on. At this point, one of our employees and my brother heard the commotion and came up from the basement. This is where we did a lot of book sorting, to see what was going on. My brother. What the hell? Bro, are you okay? Employee. Oh my gosh, what happened? Karen. You have lazy workers, that is what happened. My brother. He is paralyzed. You cannot just do that. My brother starts helping me up out of my chair, and the look on Karen's face is priceless. You can tell that she knows what she had just done was wrong, but she was not going to admit it. In fact, she kept the whole spiel going. Karen. I want to speak to the manager. My brother. Yes, well, you just assaulted one of them. Get the hell out of here, lady, before I call the police. Karen. Go ahead. I want the police officers to know you are phony and pretend to be disabled to get out of work. My brother gives a look at our employee, and she knows right away he is telling her to call the police officer. My brother tries to de-escalate the situation while our employee is on the phone, but Karen just kept getting crazier and crazier. Luckily, the police arrived quickly, and we were able to tell them the entire situation that had just happened. Karen, of course, tries telling the police that she should have been the one calling the police to report someone faking a disability, but the police were not buying it. My brother, listen, I am telling you this is a family business, and my brother and I run this store. Why would we jeopardize that and fake a disability? Karen. Yeah, right. I am not leaving until I talk to the real manager or owner. At this point, we are exhausted dealing with her, and we even tell the police that they can check our security camera to verify that she really did push me out of my chair. I made the point to the police that even if she did think I was faking a disability, what gives her the right to push me out of my chair like that and put her hands on me? Well, the police officers agreed with that logic. My brother and I told the police that we wanted her out of there, and that if she did not leave, then we wanted to charge her with trespassing. Of course, Karen starts freaking out, but even then, she surprises us by throwing herself on the floor and kicking and screaming like a child. I was so shocked. Just when I thought it could not get any worse, it does. Luckily, the police are able to remove Karen from the property, and we were able to file a restraining order so that she is not allowed to come back. Like I said, I was used to people questioning my wheelchair or asking me about being paralyzed. I have never experienced anything like that, even until this day. That was the only time someone has ever gotten physical with me. It is sad that people are so ignorant or uneducated that they assume people like me are lazy or just faking it. I have been through a lot and been through even more learning to navigate a life of paralysis. I hope that one day people will not make assumptions about disabled people because we are capable of anything just like everyone else. The next one is a pro-revenge story. Quick backstory to keep it from being too boring. I had recently lost my job, like most people at the time, and was having to do odd jobs on Craigslist just to get by. I recruited a friend to help me with various odd jobs since he was in a similar situation. We pooled our resources and cobbled together enough equipment to do landscaping work, along with other manual labor jobs. We were both young, in our early 20s, and didn't really know when we were being scammed or fooled. We got a call from one of our ads to do some landscaping work for a guy who happened to live about a mile away. Awesome! We wouldn't have to spend much on gas, but we would have to sacrifice our Labor Day weekend to do the job since it was a large one. The guy asked us to put in a raised bed that essentially wrapped around his entire house. Imagine a house in a newly built subdivision with a smallish yard and a few trees. He wanted the bed to be built with landscaping bricks and wanted us to replicate a style that his neighbor had done. Cool, no problem. We tried to discuss payment, but he kept giving us the runaround. Due to our desperate situation, we were fooled into doing the work without agreeing upon a labor fee. This was our mistake, one that was never repeated. We were just happy to have some work. We spent 2 full days working our asses off in the middle of summer without really knowing what we would get paid. We used our tools, truck, and time, grinding away, but we kept wondering why this guy was acting so shady. Finally, on day 3, near the end of the day, I had had enough of the runaround, so I knocked on the door and confronted the guy about payment. He started getting aggressive and threatening us with non-payment, which immediately escalated the situation. I grabbed my friend and brought him into the argument. After about 30 minutes of arguing, the guy decided he would pay us $70 for the work. Yeah, $70 to split between us after 3 days of labor. Cool, screw us, right? We loaded up our truck with the tools and waited for the guy to come out with our cash. This person came out with a huge wad of cash but proceeded to only hand over $70. Jerk. We collected our money and grabbed our last item, a tarp. We had been using a really large tarp to put weeds, grass, and extra dirt on to make our lives easier since we didn't have a wheelbarrow at the time. The accumulated mound on this thing had to have been 4 feet high. We dragged it into the middle of his front yard and dumped the tarp. This was the first duck you. He was begging us not to do it, but he could eat a dick at this point. We loaded up and sped off, because, angry youngsters. Now for the pro-revenge part. My friend's mom was a professional landscaper. She heard our story and offered some excellent revenge advice. Take the backpack sprayers we had, fill them with a warm saltwater mix, then ride over and spray his yard. We planned to do this about 2 months later. When the time came, we executed the plan late at night, around 2 a.m. We parked down at the pool parking lot, walked down to his house, and absolutely drenched this guy's yard. We came back about a month later and everything was dead or dying. Flowers, grass, small trees, everything. Mess with the guys who are doing your yard work? Screw your yard. The next one is a petty revenge story. Many years ago, I worked for an organization providing frontline customer service. It was a decent place to work, but our manager had lots of rules. One of the rules was that we could not do any personal printing with the printers at work. If we did, we were expected to pay 50 cents per page for black and white printing and $1 per page for color. I'm not sure who made this rule, but the manager was constantly reminding us. Our desks were not assigned, meaning any day you could be sitting at any desk, depending on your assigned tasks for the day. One day, I was interviewing for another job within the organization, but at another location. Prior to the interview, the manager of the other location asked me if I'd mind printing a copy of my resume and bringing it with me, as their printers were down for the day. I said no problem, and figured I'd print it at work since it was work-related. I was sitting at a desk that did not have a printer. The closest printer was located between my manager's desk and an employee's desk, so I printed it and stood up to go get it. Before I could go to the printer, my manager got there first. My print job went ahead of hers. When she saw what I had printed, she said, "OP, this looks like a personal print job." I explained it wasn't, but she disagreed and said since it had nothing to do with our day-to-day work, I had to pay $2 for 4 black and white pages. I begrudgingly paid up. I asked her what happened to the money, and she said she always put it in the Christmas party fund. All right. A few weeks later, I was sitting at the desk with the printer. It was lunchtime, and everyone except my manager agreed to go to a nearby restaurant for lunch. I had walked out of our building and realized I forgot my wallet, so I quickly ran back in to get it. When I got to my desk, I could hear the printer going. I was curious about what was being printed as it was spitting out page after page. I quickly glanced at the pile and saw at least 100 pages printed in color, announcing a Sweet 16 for Trista, our manager's daughter. It very obviously belonged to my manager. My manager came out of the bathroom a moment later and seemed shocked to see me standing there. I picked up the pile and passed it to her, telling her that our Christmas party fund was going to get a big boost. She said nothing but looked really uncomfortable. A few weeks later, our district manager made his quarterly visit. He talked about the upcoming Christmas party and how excited he was for it. I decided it was time for some petty revenge. I raised my hand and said, "Just wondering how much we've accumulated this year for the Christmas party from print jobs." He looked so confused and asked me to explain what I meant. So I told him about our manager's rule. He got really quiet and said he'd have to review this. The next day, my manager sent an email saying the printing rule was something she was misinformed about and would be abolished immediately. Me, being the little crap disturber I am, hit reply all and asked what would happen to the already accumulated funds. Someone else said we should have a nice healthy fund for a pizza lunch, and everyone agreed. The next day, I heard my manager ordering 10 pizzas for lunch. She also used her own personal credit card to pay for it all. Do I think she was pocketing the printing money all along? Absolutely. But it was fun making her sweat, and then having her spend nearly $300 the next day to make up for it. The next one is an entitled people story. I live in a second-floor apartment with my 2 teenagers and 2 cats. An old couple, 75 plus, live below us. The apartments are poorly maintained and not very well insulated. We can hear their TV, hear them talking, hear when she screams at him, when their 6-year-old spoiled brat grandson comes and throws tantrums, and whenever they open and close their door. Apparently, they have been continually complaining to the landlord about us being very loud. They continually bang on their ceiling when we drop something or close the bathroom door, which sticks. Or heaven forbid I get up at night for any reason. She screamed up the heating vent at me one night when I knocked my water glass off my bedside table. They shout when we walk up the stairs. They have also complained that we use too much water when we shower, which is 100% none of their business. Yes, my cats do run around a bit, but we keep them occupied, take them for walks, and they are pretty mellow as middle-aged cats tend to be. We do not listen to loud TV. The kids listen to music on their headphones. We don't jump or stomp or throw parties. It all came down to the other night around 10:30 p.m. when my son was up late making food and one of the cats decided it was playtime. Maybe ran around for 3 minutes while my son caught him. Bang, bang, bang on the ceiling. The cat goes into my daughter's room and promptly goes to sleep. The old man comes running up the stairs and bangs on the door. I don't answer because I'm in bed and the cat is put away. Next thing you know, they called the police with a noise complaint. A noise complaint for the cat and my son using the microwave. The police show up, the house is dark, I'm in pajamas, and the cats are asleep in the bedroom. They look at me and say, "You're in bed?" Me, "Yes." Them. And what was happening? Me, "My son was making food and the cat was running around." Them. "Well, cats and teenagers do that. Is that why they called us?" Me, "Yes." The cop then looks at his partner with a "what the hell" look on his face and says, "Jesus Christ, what a waste of time." Then he asked me if I wanted to file a complaint for harassment. The next day, the old lady shouts across the parking spots, "We are entitled to silence whenever we want silence. You are obnoxious and rude, and I'm going to get you kicked out of here." The landlord calls and is pissed. He says they have been continually complaining about how loud we are and it's ruining their quality of life, and we need to keep it down. So I told him what they were complaining about and that I am moving out in 60 days. If they call again, I will make a complaint of harassment because this is stupid. His response, "Okay, no problem." Note that 95% of their complaints have to do with regular daytime living noise. Occasionally something happens after 10, but rarely. Are they somehow entitled to silence at all times? In a shoddy first-floor apartment? Ha ha ha, right. I hope whoever moves in after I leave has small kids and plays loud pop music and does exercise videos in the living room. The next one is an entitled parent story. This has nothing to do with me personally. A close friend of mine, who we'll call Jake, asked me to write his story here as he is pretty crap with words and doesn't know how to put his feelings down. He has autism, which wasn't diagnosed until he was already an adult, and moved out of his mother's place and went no contact. His mother, who I'll call Wacky Wanda, WW for short, has always treated Jake like a baby, from the time he was born, up until he went no contact with her. He tells me that as far back that he can remember, she would make him wear bibs at the dinner table and always hand feed him. She claimed it was because he was a special child that needed the extra help. His father, Frank, would always chastise WW for this, saying that he would never grow up if she kept babying him. She would get pissed and tell him that he was being ridiculous and that she loved her baby boy so much. Way too much, if you ask me. Jake began to believe that he was developmentally challenged because of her. W would show up at his school and throw a fit when the teachers wouldn't pull Jake out of class to see her. He began to deal with bullying from other kids who would call him a mama's boy and tease him about wanting his mommy all of the time. As Jake got older, he started fighting back against the bullying. Eventually, he started yelling at his WW whenever she would show up and tell her to go home and to leave him alone. This never went over well, and he tells me she would sit alone in her room and pout, crying about how he had hurt her feelings. He would always apologize, and she would coo at him and pinch his cheeks and say that she couldn't stay mad at him because he was her baby boy, and he was all she had in life, completely forgetting she had a husband, by the way, so ducking manipulative. Once Jake was a teenager, Jake started acting out and becoming more independent from WW. I don't know if everyone knows this, but not all autistic people are built the same. Jake is a very good-looking guy. He is one of those too pretty to look at type of guys. He started rebelling by getting his dad to let him get tattoos. He started smoking cigarettes and pot and began hanging out with the goth, morbid crowd in high school. He listened to heavy metal music and wearing a leather jacket, eyeliner, and black nail polish. His black hair was always cropped short and he smoothed it back with gel. And from the pictures I saw, woo-wee. Even I said if I had seen that walking by me, I would be turning my head to check him out. That gave him an ego boost. Not to mention he is very good looking, even without the makeup. WW hated Jake's style and said it made him look like a clown, and that his beautiful skin was too precious to destroy with tattoos and makeup. She threw his clothes away more than once, replacing them with clothes that she approved of. Frank would always take him to the mall so he could buy new ones, and Jake took pleasure out of throwing out the clothes WW gave him. She would still make them eat dinner at the table every night. She was one of those women that was very traditional about family dinner. They always sat down and she put a bib on Jake and hand-fed him his meal until he was finished. She would even spit on a napkin and wipe his face if he got anything on it. Jake noticed that whenever she did this, she would side-eye Frank with a smirk, like she wanted him to be jealous or something. Weird. The last time they ate together as a family, as soon as Jake sat down, she pulled out the bib. He tried to ask her not to do this as he was 16 and fully capable of feeding himself. She chastised him and told him to do as he was told. The bibs were too small and wouldn't even fit around his neck. He tried to tell her this, but she would just sit it on his chest, then start hand-feeding him by making plain noises. Jake tore the bib off and told her enough was enough. He was 16 years old and didn't need to be fed like a baby. You got upset and started whining. Frank suddenly blew up and told her to stop her crap because this was getting too creepy, even for him to tolerate. He tried to support her in the dread that her son was getting older and no longer needed her, but this was too much to take. Jake went to his room and didn't come out for the rest of the night. DW pouted and cried for more than a day in hopes of making Jake apologize for refusing her, but he refused. She realized she was losing the battle with keeping her son a baby forever. Time to amp up the crazy. Jake came home from school the next day and found WW in the kitchen, dressed up in all black eyeliner and lipstick, and she even dyed her hair black. She had spiked bracelets and a choker. She looked ridiculous. How I wish I could have seen a picture of this because it sounded hilarious. Jake was shocked and asked her just what the duck she was doing. He noticed the shirt she was wearing was cut way too low, and he could see way more cleavage than he was comfortable with. She bounded over to him and asked him if he liked it. He was too shocked to respond with what he wanted to say and said, "Sure." He tells me that she would push out her breasts toward him in an effort to make him look. For months after that, that was all WW would dress like. She would openly brag to her friends that Jake copied her style and she was so proud of him. She used to wear turtlenecks and mom jeans with slip-on shoes. She was the farthest thing from goth punk you can imagine. One night Jake was asleep. She climbed into bed with him and tried to cuddle with him. He woke up and felt someone touching him inappropriately. He turned around and saw WW. He freaked out and told her to get the duck out of his room. She pouted and cried until Jake went to leave. He noticed his door was locked and he had to unlock it to get out. He had to lock himself in the bathroom, and she sat outside the door, begging him to come sleep with her. Jake shouted at her that she was touching him inappropriately and that it wasn't okay. And it was weird she did this with the door locked. She screamed that that was how mommies show their love until Frank came out of their room to yell at her for the way she was acting, and that it was creepy for a mother to want to cuddle her 16-year-old son with the door locked. She screamed that he didn't understand the bond she and Jake had, and that he was jealous. Jake screamed that they had no bond. DW cried, and Frank shouted at her to move away from the door, or he would do something he might regret later. He took Jake, and they went to sleep at a motel for the night. Jake told his dad everything that happened. Frank finally had enough. He couldn't stand the weird and creepy behavior from WW anymore. He filed for divorce and got custody of Jake, and WW was given visitation rights. She was mandated to attend parenting classes and therapy, and she actually went, under the threat of losing any and all rights to her son, of course, but she staunchly refused to believe she had ever done anything wrong. Jake dreaded visitation, but as he was still a minor, he had no choice in the matter. He would go and make sure to lock his door to prevent her from coming in. She did give him space when he was at her house, for a while. When Jake was 17, his dad paid for him to enroll in driver's ed and got him a car. This went over like a fart in church because WW got pissed when Jake pulled up to her house in a brand spanking new car. She lost it and called up Frank to scream at him about how she was endangering her baby boy. He hung up on her. Things got worse once Jake started seeing a girl at school. She was a pretty blonde girl that dressed in similar fashion to Jake. When WW found out, she went insane. Jake was in his room sleeping, and WW picked the lock. It was one of those push-in locks that a bobby pin can easily pick. What Jake told me next made my heart drop. She undressed herself and climbed into bed with him and began essaying him. He woke up and freaked out. He ran away from the house and drove back to his dad's in tears, and they called the police. You got arrested and imprisoned for 11 years. Jake became severely depressed and tried to unalive himself more than once. His dad put him into therapy and he got better over time, but he still struggles with everything his mother had done to him. Jake was formally diagnosed with autism and he is on medication that keeps him functional. He's one of the bartenders at my club and we're really close friends. He's best friends with my boyfriend Kyle. Jake has a girlfriend who is one of the sweetest women I've ever met. Jake and I have a connection because we both have experienced SA from relatives and we both are stronger for having gone through that. Sorry this was so long, but he wanted his story shared with everyone. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.